Every system that is breaking apart right now, relationships, governments, entire societies, is breaking for the same energetic reason. And it starts with one very human, very misunderstood emotion: resentment. Hi, I'm Uma. I'm your host for the Emotional Literacy Unlocked series. I'm a classically trained shaman. I train shamans internationally, and today we're going into an emotion that I think is one of the most important ones for understanding not just our relationships, but the world we're living in right now: resentment. Before we go into the wound, I want to ground us in something true and beautiful about being human. We are playful beings at every age of our lives. Watch a child. They play mother, father, child. They play doctor, teacher, superhero. And here's what's fascinating about that play. The child fully embodies the role. They take it seriously. They really are the mother, the doctor, the teacher for those few minutes. And then playtime is over, and they return to being a child again. And in this in and out movement, they fully embody a role and then returning to themselves. This is one of the most important capacities we have as humans. It's how we learn to navigate our social world. It's how we test out new ways of being without losing ourselves in them. And this doesn't stop when we grow up. We do this our whole lives. In our jobs, our relationships, our families, we take on roles: partner, parent, leader, employee. And the healthy version of this is exactly like the child's play. We embody the role fully, and we still know how to return to ourselves underneath it. This fluidity, this ability to move in and out of roles, is what keeps us and our relationships and our whole societies alive and adaptable. Now let's talk about what happens when that fluidity disappears. Resentment happens when we get stuck in a role, when we are forced to hold something more rigidly, more seriously, more heavily than would actually be aligned with us. And very often, this happens because someone else in the system is not holding up their part of the play. I hear this constantly from women I work with, especially those with children. They tell me, my husband is like another child in the house. I have to take care of him too. Feel what's happening here, energetically. She started in the role of the partner, a role that, at its best, is playful, mutual, eye to eye. And slowly, because the other person is not taking responsibility for their own part, she is pushed out of the partnership into over-parenting. She's now holding a role that was never actually hers to hold alone. And her system, quite rightly, starts to resent that. This is the core truth I want you to take from this video. Resentment is not really anger to another person. Resentment is the feeling of being trapped in a role that has become too rigid, too heavy, too serious, because somebody else did not do their part. Energetically, this is the difference between stone and water. Play is water. It flows, it adapts, it moves around obstacles. Resentment is stone. Fixed, hard, heavy. And once we're in that stone state, our whole nervous system organizes around holding, gripping, bracing. There is no flow left. There is no play left. Just the weight of a role we never agreed to carry alone. I want to share something personal here because I've lived this. I was married for 17 years, and for most of those years, I was what people would call a very capable, strong woman. I took care of everything. I took care of disabled family members. I took care of a husband who struggled with alcoholism, and I was the one who intervened, who pushed him toward getting sober. Something, by the way, that to this day he doesn't fully acknowledge. And I want you to feel what happened in me during those years. I wanted to be in a partnership of equals. But I was pushed slowly, invisibly, over years, into being the only emotionally responsible adult in the system. He was not meeting me in the play of partnership. So I had to become rigid to hold everything together. And underneath that rigidity was so much resentment. I invested so much energy, and what did I get in return? That question lived in me for years. Frustration, imbalance, a kind of internal freeze where I just endured one day at a time until something would change. That is resentment. That is exactly what it feels like from the inside. It's not fiery like anger. It's heavier, colder. It's the feeling of being locked in a position with no room to move because somebody else's lack of responsibility became your unwanted job. So why do we become rigid instead of simply communicating and returning to softness? Because change feels unsafe. If I stop overcompensating, if I stop being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who holds it all together, what happens? Will things fall apart? Will I be blamed? Will I be alone? This is also, by the way, where resentment toward anything unfamiliar comes from, toward people who are different from us, toward other cultures, other genders, other ways of living. When our own roles feel rigid and fragile, anything that threatens to change the shape of that role feels dangerous. So we resent what's foreign, not because it's actually a threat, but because our own system has become too stiff to safely include anything new. I want you to really hear this. Rigidity is a fear response dressed up as strength. It looks like responsibility. It looks like being the reliable one, the strong one, the together one. But underneath, it's often just fear, frozen into a shape that looks like competence. Now I want to bring in something that I think is one of the most important and overlooked pieces of this whole topic. The more power one has, physical strength, intelligence, status, charisma, position, wealth, it doesn't matter which kind, the more responsibility they carry to stay fluid and playful with that power. Let that sink in for a moment. Power that becomes rigid stops being generative. It becomes oppressive. Think about a physically strong person who never voluntarily softens, never checks in, never plays gently with weaker people around them. That rigidity of power is what creates fear in a group, whereas a strong person who plays with their strength, who can be gentle, who invites others in as equals despite having more power, that person creates safety. Children do this instinctively. Watch how a child tests an adult with power, a parent, a teacher, an older sibling. They push a little, they test. Will you still play with me? Will you still meet me as an equal sometimes, even though you're bigger, stronger, in charge? That test is a nervous system check. The child is asking, is your power safe or is it rigid? And this is exactly why we are watching so much resentment build up in the world right now. Look at politics. Look at large institutions, corporations, governmental systems. These are systems that hold enormous power over people's life. And many of them have become completely rigid. They do not bend. They do not invite the people they govern to the play of shared decision making. They hold their power like a stone. And what grows underneath rigid power every single time is resentment. Massive collective resentment. Because people being governed are being forced into roles, compliance, endurance, over responsibility for their own survival that were never fairly negotiated. Just like the wife holding the whole household because her husband won't hold his part. Here's where I want to bring in the shamanic view of what's actually happening on a larger scale. Systems that are flexible while remaining stable can handle change. Systems that are rigid shatter when change comes because they have no give left in them. Think of an earthquake. A house built with a bit of flexibility at its core will move with the earth and remain standing. A house built completely rigid will be torn apart by the same vibration. We are living through an era of extraordinary change in consciousness, in technology, in how humans relate to each other and to power itself. And any system, a marriage, a company, a government, an old belief structure that refuses to stay playful, that refuses to keep some fluidity in how it holds power, is going to experience increasing resentment from the people inside it, until eventually it breaks. This is not punishment. This is physics. This is energy. Rigid things break when the world moves, and they don't move with it. And here is the beautiful, hopeful part of this teaching. Your own personal resentment work is part of this larger shift. Every time you notice yourself locked into an over-responsible, rigid role, and you find your way back to softness, to honest communication, to negotiating what's actually yours to carry, you're not just healing your own nervous system, you are loosening one small knot in a much bigger stuck system. Consciousness doesn't just evolve in grand global events. It evolves one person, one relationship, one honest conversation at a time. So let's bring this back to you, practically. How do we work with this? First, ask yourself, where in my life am I holding a role more rigidly, more seriously, more heavily than is actually aligned with me? Second, ask, what responsibility am I carrying right now that was never actually mine to carry alone? Where did I quietly step into someone else's unfinished part of the play? Third, and this one takes courage, if you hold any kind of power over others as a parent, as a partner, as a boss, a leader in any form, ask yourself honestly, am I still playing with this power, or have I become rigid with it? Do the people I have power over still feel safe enough to test me, to push back gently, to know that I will still meet them as an equal, even though I hold more power in this moment? And fourth, the way back is never through more force. It's through vulnerability and communication. Naming the over-responsibility out loud, saying to the people in your system, this role has become too heavy for me to hold alone. I need you to take your part back. And offering the other person, even if it's uncomfortable, the actual chance to step back into their responsibility. Resentment is not a character flaw. It's not something to be ashamed of, and it's not proof that you are a bigger or ungrateful person. Resentment is a signal from your own body and from the systems around you that something has become too rigid to survive the changes that are coming. The way forward for a person and for the whole world is exactly the same. Find your way back to softness, find your way back to play, find your way back to fluid power, power that bends, that includes, that stays in relationship instead of freezing into control. That's how we survive what's coming. Not through strength alone, through flow. I'll see you in the next video. Like and follow if this one landed for you, and if you recognize yourself in any part of this, I would love to hear about it.